Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about what is it like to be a doctor during the month of Ramadan and our tips and tricks on how to make the most of it, our personal tips and tricks. So yeah, Abdul, we're now in the month of Ramadan. It's our third or fourth Ramadan as qualified doctors. What was Ramadan like when you were a doctor in FY1?
Ramadan Mubarak to all our listeners. Oh, it's viewers now, isn't it?
Viewers now.
So, I think as with Ramadan, the first 3 days are difficult, and then you kind of get into the routine. You kind of figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
It was different, obviously, because this is the first time you're working and fasting. And F1, F2, you're busy doing on-call. So F1, I think it wasn't that bad for me because I was doing clinics in infectious diseases and HIV.
Fine.
So it wasn't too much of an issue for me. I was able to break my fast, go home, 9 to 5 clinics. But for F2, I was doing ITU while fasting.
So that's difficult.
Yeah, so that's very, very different. And obviously, when ITU, we were all gowning up. I think it was at the pandemic time as well. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, ITU, you have to double glove, double gown, tape it up, mask,
Sweaty.
goggles. And you're in there for a certain period of time because you can't come out because PPE was so valuable. You couldn't waste it. So, Ramadan was a very different experience for F2, but I still enjoyed it, was able to make a decent thing out of it. But the perk I had was, I think for 2 weeks I was doing nights. So obviously during the night I was able to eat and drink and pray and do what I need to do. And during the day I was able to sleep and get up for prayers. So for me I had like a skewed experience, which I can share a bit more. But how was it for you?
I think, so as an FY1,
What were you doing? What rotation?
during those years as well, it was closer to summer as well, so it was hot. I remember it was hot. So I only had, what did I have? I think I was on acute medicine. I was on acute medicine, I do remember, No, it was tough as well. So I think you're right. At first you find it difficult because suddenly you've not got that caffeine hit in the morning. So I love my coffee. Even this year, the first day, so it's only day 4, but the first day without the morning coffee, I had this bounding headache. Literally, I was feeling nauseated. I couldn't stand. It was horrible. It was horrible having that. I think that's what I struggled with the most. And I think what happens is the main thing I focus on now is energy conservation. So I'm not going to do something like just unnecessary run down the corridor. To run a gas when the same goal will be done in no time, right? So I found it difficult at first because of the headaches and the dehydration. And I found that when everyone else was sort of re-energized, say after lunchtime to do their evening jobs, I was a bit slow. But no, I found it difficult, but I think by the midpoint of it, I was back up to speed. I think what's most difficult is that your thought process slows down a little bit.
Yeah, you slow down.
Right? And you're conscious of it because now you're a doctor, you're not a student, right? You can't afford to get a question wrong. So when you're a doctor, now suddenly you're thinking, let me think through this, let me make sure I've got it right. So you're that little bit slower. But a consultant told me you'd rather be slower and correct than be hasty and wrong, especially when you're in that situation. So yeah, that's how I found it in a nutshell.
So what are like practical tips, or what do you want to talk about first in terms of advice we can give to future junior doctors that are going through it now?
Yeah, so I think let's talk a little bit about practicing faith in the work environment. Right? Be it a doctor, be it a lawyer, be whatever, right? I think the number one thing I found is people are so considerate. People are considerate. You might have the one that isn't, right? But most people are considerate, right? So I think it was Noor who once told his work boss, he said, I don't need a break. I just need 2 to 3 minutes 3 times a day, just so I can go do my prayers, right? The boss turned around to him and said, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? Take those and your break on top. Just look at that. So I think at work, most people are aware of Ramadan. They're aware that you're fasting, you're not drinking, you're not eating. They're aware that you have to pray as well, right? So I think when people just know that you're practicing Ramadan, you're praying and everything, if you just communicate that, if they don't know, right, I think you can work as a team to get around it. So if you do need to go off at whatever time to just go and do your prayers, They know that, and you can work around that as a team. So I found that when you let your team members know, and when the team members really engage with you and they help you out, it's quite easy. Yeah. It's quite easy. They can help you create time, and no one bats an eye, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we fail to realize, especially in the NHS, especially working in this country, how receptive people are to religion. Pretty much everyone knows about Ramadan when it's here. People are very respectful. I think there's a fear of like, what would they say if I would go out to go pray? Would they allow me? And I think did
you ever feel scared to ask your boss to pray?
Nah, I think,
or like you were hindering your team?
Maybe sometimes in the beginning when you're starting work and you're like, is this appropriate time to go pray and whatnot?
Yeah.
But over time when you get a bit more comfortable and you understand how it works, because when you're F1, you don't know what's important, what's urgent, what can wait, right? You're just rushing to everything, right? Yeah. And you just always want to be present, which in itself is a bit unhealthy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're overworking yourself. So I think once I realized that, do you know what? They encourage you to go pray. They don't mind you taking out a few minutes. And if you're nice and polite about it, or if you're like, do you know what? I'll go. I think the thing is just being strategic within the sense of like, you know what? I'm going to take my break during my prayer time. So I can go eat, have lunch, pray, or I'm going to be a bit late doing this or come late. And I think if you explain to them and you're genuine and sincere about it, they will understand. And I don't think anyone will ever stop you from praying. Obviously, if it's a medical emergency, you're in the middle of a surgery, it's a different scenario and there are exemptions, right? But on the whole, people are very receptive to it and they're very encouraging of it.
That reminds me once, right? It was a Friday Jummah, right? And it was getting close to the time. We're still on the ward round from like 9 a.m. Yeah. Can you imagine? And it's getting there. We've still got patients left, 3 or 4. Can you imagine? So I'm now inside. I'm now thinking, all right, it's 3 patients. Can we get it done? I could probably still make Jummah. I don't know. But it's one of them, when you're cutting it close to the edge. Yeah. The consultant stops and he goes, don't you have prayer to be going to? Yeah. And I was just like, when you're like dumbfounded and you're like, yeah, I do. What do you say? You're just dumb because the consultant stopped the ward round and he said, don't you have prayer to go to? Because he realizes on a Friday you go to prayers. So I remember he literally said, go off, we'll complete it. There might be a few jobs left for these 3. We'll bring you up to speed when you're back. Yeah,
I think, that's interesting. A lot of people have said that. Where like their work colleagues remind them like, isn't it prayer time? Aren't you running late? And they're like, do you know what? I'll sort this out for you. Hand over to me and catch up. So you'd be surprised on how receptive and like, I don't know what the word is, conducive it is to pray in the work environment. Plus, the other thing which I realized the other day is hospitals pretty much all have prayer rooms.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate some workplaces may not even have the facilities to pray, but as a doctor, as a healthcare professional in medicine, in the NHS, it's actually a luxury and a privilege to be able to have a prayer room or like a multi-faith room. So I think don't be scared about asking praying or wanting to go pray. Speak to your team, make it clear from the beginning, especially in Ramadan, especially with iftar and stuff like that, make it clear and you'll be surprised. Like a lot of people are receptive to it and they highly encourage it.
Exactly. So I don't think there is a restriction on you practicing really. You can make the most. You can make the most.
Work around it, time management, do tasks that are important, do tasks that can wait, fit it around it, do the priority stuff more sooner,
I think that's important to understand. So in your team, you need to understand what things need to be done ASAP, what things can be done 10 minutes later. So like a discharge summary, you doing it 10 minutes sooner is probably not going to change much, right? So realizing that, and I think the number one thing though is communication. I think so. For example, the patient and nursing staff might not like a late discharge summary, right? They might want it 10 minutes sooner. But if you just say to them, look, I'll be gone for 10 minutes. I promise I'll be back. I'll be doing that ASAP after that. They know. But if they don't know what you're doing,
you've just suddenly disappeared off the ward without telling anyone, and something happens, then you're in a bit of a sticky situation.
They're just like, where is he? Is he dossing around? Is he messing around?
And the next time you do want to go for prayer and you say that, they may not be as thingy because they don't know any better, right? Exactly. So communication and I think a bit of education as well. But in this moment in time, I think a lot of people are very aware of it.
Exactly.
All right.
So let's talk a little bit about sleep, because how did you balance sleep in Ramadan as a working? So obviously most people are going in at 9 a.m, 8 a.m. for the surgeons especially. So they're going in early. How did you manage sleep?
So sleep was difficult. There's no two ways about it. You can't kind of hack your way through it. Sleep was tricky, especially on ITU. So every shift on ITU is a long day. So you're working for 12 hours and you're in super early for 8 o'clock handover. So I think sleep, I've always been a bad sleeper, poor sleeper. I think what I had to do was try get as much good sleep as possible the night before. Squeeze in a nap if possible. But I don't know what to say with regards to sleep, if I'm honest, man. It's like you just have to do your best. When it's time to sleep, you know, the usual habit of checking your phone, replying to emails, snacking, watching Netflix. I stopped all of that because you don't have time. And I know it's habit. You've done something for like 11 months of the year. It's very difficult to do it. All right. Exactly. So I think getting rid of that, preserving your sleep, preserving the quality of your sleep. There's sleep hygiene, right? Dark room, no electronic devices, nice scent, nice smell, relaxing showering. So I think this is more important now in Ramadan than ever before or any other time of the year.
I agree. So I agree. I think you lose volume, and it is going to happen if you want to make the most of Ramadan, right? If you want to spend the nights praying, if you want to spend the nights reciting Quran and so forth. So you're giving up sleep for that. And that is part of Ramadan, right? Giving up sleep to worship, right? But I think when it comes to sleep, like you said, it's about increasing that quality of sleep in that moment, right? And then napping. I think napping is quite important. I think taking small little breaks or just shut eye is quite important, and it keeps you rejuvenated. But you're right, you've given all the tips. I think the number one thing is increase the efficiency. Stop browsing when you're supposed to be knocked out cold. That's it really to say. I think sleep is one of the most challenging things in Ramadan, especially for the guys who get up super early, have to get out to work and come home late as well. But it's part of the struggle, man.
I guess so. I think like it's something you can't avoid. It is part of the past of Ramadan, and you know it's a month where it's testing and trying for you. Hence the rewards are so great.
I think as a physician, just to say though, as a doctor, as a physician, the importance is it's about self-awareness, right? When you're making clinical calls, when you're making clinical judgment and things like that, just being a bit more cautious, right? Because you're a little bit slower. It doesn't hurt to ask your colleague. It doesn't hurt to ask your boss. It doesn't hurt to ask a nursing colleague a question that you would probably know quickly a month ago, right? So I think just being a bit self-aware is important. But I think you can do both. There's nothing stopping you from fasting and doing it very well, making the most of Ramadan, and also being a top doctor. So.
I agree. As in, like, it shouldn't hold you back.
Food. What about food as a working professional? Any advice on food and how it affects you if you eat good or bad food?
So, obviously, Ramadan is notorious for oily, fatty foods.
Weight gain as well instead of weight loss.
Heavy food. And I'm a victim of it. But this Ramadan, I've tried to not do it. So, I think the standard thing, eating healthy, eating light meals, not something too heavy that gives you reflux, that wakes you up in the middle of the night because you're struggling, nothing too oily. And I think what I did, and a good tip was, obviously when you break your fast, you can enjoy yourself, you can kind of splurge, whatever. But around, the whole time when you're about to open your fast and you're eating before it, having food that gives you energy throughout the day. But a slow release of energy, the dates, the bananas, certain type of carbs, certain type of sugars, right? Not just, I think, be sensible with the food you eat, because you can either eat food that looks after you while you're fasting and during the day, or you can have food that will punish you later.
That's a good way to put it.
It's one or the other, and you have to be very firm and rigid with it, especially if you're working on calls and you're going throughout the days. And obviously hydration, try to drink as much water as possible during the period when you are allowed to drink, because you're proper thirsty, you're rushing, and it's difficult, man. So food, I've seen and like experienced the difference between the two completely, because there'd be times when I just like completely just basically pig out on like all the oils and fats and PFC and KFC and everything, right? But you're right, it punishes you. The next day you're thirsty, you've got a headache because of you're so dehydrated. You're slower than ever. There's slow because you're a little bit fasting, but then there's really slow because you've got no fuel within you. So I've seen the difference. So when I started also incorporating, so even throughout Ramadan, I will try to incorporate a bit of exercise in as well, right? That's important.
So I still get in my exercise, and when I started doing that, when I started training after iftar, right, I learned about the foods really. I really took an interest in foods. I really thought about what fruits, what carbs, what sort of sugars I should be eating and avoiding really. And once I did that, I really did see the difference in energy levels through the day when working as well. So definitely watch what you eat, avoid the oils, not completely avoid, I'd say, because I think everyone's going to have some.
Definitely.
I think you're going to have some always. But yeah, I think in moderation and lots of fruits and healthy stuff basically to go in. And that's quite important.
Agree. So stuff like nuts. Some people take protein fibers or like protein shakes. Not protein fiber. What's that with the protein bars? I don't know if you've ever done that.
No. I've
Some
not
people
buzzed.
do that. They have the heel shakes. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Some people have lots of.
I was ahead with the snap yesterday.
Yeah, so he has that. People have dates. So be strategic with it, because I think if you're smart with it, it can work in your favor. Whereas before I used to eat whatever was there, but now I feel like, okay, this is what gives me a slow release of energy throughout the day. But food and breaking fasts, tie with your breaks as well. Before we forget, I used to be like, okay, at the end of the day, you need breaks and you're always allowed breaks, but I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take a break at this time of the day. I'm going to take a prayer break like that. So be strategic with the breaks as well with eating and drinking, because you want to eat comfortably. You don't want to like stuff your face in, because you have to get back onto the ward
100%.
and you're kind of like got reflux problems and you got hiccups and this, that, because it's happened to me, right? Because you're rushing out and you're quickly trying to eat something and you come back and you feel even worse. So try to do your best, but obviously the quality and the type of food you eat does help.
100%. All right, so the last thing that we should really just touch on is now, how can you maximize the most of Ramadan as a professional? Because this is one of the things that it's a regret, right? I think when we're students, right, we've got time and time and time. You can spend all the hours however the hell you like. The truth is you're limited. I think there are a lot of us who feel that work has unfortunately, obviously work takes up a number of hours, it's taken it away from you. How do you make the most? How would you say that?
The most of Ramadan?
Most of Ramadan, as a working professional.
I think it's understanding the fact that you're a healthcare professional looking after unwell and vulnerable people, that in itself is an easy way to get a lot of rewards in Ramadan. So intentions and sincerity and understanding, do you know what, I'm a medic, I'm a nurse, I'm a healthcare professional, I can help people, and in this month of Ramadan, you know, I'm even more conscious of it, right? So just doing your normal day job, you're getting even more rewards, right? Taking the time out when, let's say, normally when you're on a break, instead of kind of being on your phone, social media, you can read, listen to a lecture, you can read Quran, you can pray, you can do so many different things. And I think the key thing in Ramadan and what I used to do was, I used to look at how I'd spend my day normally, and I realized I used to waste a lot of time. Even when you're busy, you waste a lot of time messing around, talking to people, talking to your colleagues, talking to the nurses. And then when it's Ramadan, you're a bit more conscious and you realize, you know what, you actually have a lot more time during the day, even while working, 100%. And not taking away from work, where you can pray, where you can kind of recite, you can listen to lectures, you can do istighfar, you can do so much. Obviously, when the work day ends, you can come home, relax, chill, do what you need to do, and then do what your extra rewards, your extra prayers, extra Quran reading. Having structure and a timetable is important. Don't do things randomly in the spur of the moment. Be like, you know what, these days I'm doing long days, these days I'm doing short days. So let's say you don't need to bang it all out on a long day as much as you would do on a short day, right? You can be strategic with it. 100%. And I think what other people have done, and it's completely okay to do, is take some of your annual leave on certain days. So the last 10 nights are important, right? To max out your rewards, to make the most of the month Ramadan. A lot of people take annual leave, or the day after they take a day off, right? Exactly. So be strategic with your annual leave. So it's making your work and your life work with Ramadan and setting realistic targets for yourself. There's no point trying to say, you know what, I'm going to recite the Quran 3 times this month. Knowing you've got a friend of mine, he's spending 22 of his ED shifts in ED breaking his fasts. 22 of them. in a 30-day Ramadan or 29 days, right? So you have to plan strategically. You know your rota ahead of the schedule. Be strategic. So if he was like, yeah, after those things, I'm going to go and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and this and that, like, be realistic, understand your timetable and adapt it to it.
I think that's the most important thing. I think we're all good at planning for studying,
Everything
for learning, for university, for entrepreneurship, for projects, for YouTube videos, etc. How many of us sit down and plan for Ramadan?
Yeah.
So I think the number one thing is, yes, just plan for Ramadan. Plan it out. Plan out your days, your hours, when you're at work, when you're not at work, when is your break.
Yeah, exactly.
And fill them with, like you said, fill them with meaningful actions, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just scrolling on TikTok or something like that. Do a form of worship. So I think that's one of the best ways to make the most, number one tip actually, to make the most of Ramadan. But that's it really. Not really qualified to go beyond.
Yeah, I think, we can only share from our experience what we found that works for us.
Yeah.
We have still a lot to learn. We're still early on in our career. I think the advantage we have in this moment is obviously we're not working full time.
Exactly.
So we can make the most of it. But anyone that's working full time is a healthcare professional. It is such a noble profession, and the rewards for it when you're helping people,
100%.
it's crazy. And make the right intentions,
Exactly.
and leverage your time. And Ramadan in this country, everyone is supportive to a certain degree, if not everyone, pretty much. So make the most of it. And I think if anyone has any tips we missed out, leave them below in the comments. Share any advice. Help each other. I think there are a lot of other people in the hospital that are fasting as well. So help each other, look after each other, have that bit of patience, because obviously Ramadan is that thing everyone gets really angry really quickly because everyone's starving and hungry, right? So it goes a long way. It really will go a long way. And I think make lots of dua for Allah to make it easy for you. And yeah, we all know we shouldn't really waste this opportunity.
Amazing. I think that's it from this today. What do you think? Anything else to say?
No, that's it.
Wicked. Thanks for watching this episode, and we'll see you in the next video.